Welcome back to Following Noah on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 85. And let me put it this way. If you have not read the Stormlight Archive and you're just clicking on this podcast to get a sample of what we're like, choose any other episode to sample of what we're like. If you have any interest in reading these books, the biggest spoilers you could ever click on are about to happen in this episode. So please click away if you have not read these chapters we're about to talk about. Okay, now that I've got that over with, Paul, how are you?
How am I? I don't know. Just, Elliot, how are you?
Eliot is questioning his entire existence.
Ah, yes. We are reading chapters 111 through 113 of Oathbringer this week for episode 85. Paul, who's on our mug before I ask for 2 words?
I'm glad you asked. This week we have Jacob. Jacob. It's mirrored on my screen, so I see Bocage, but Jacob. Jacob is an ardent. I did my research. He's an ardent, and we're really appreciative of him. On the mug, it says earnest student loans. I got this at work from a coworker who was giving everyone mugs. I don't know about the company or so. I'm running out of mugs, I'll be honest. So you have a mug about earnest student loans. Thank you so much, Jacob, for your support.
Thank you.
Following Noah on. Yeah, maybe I'll get some more mugs soon. So we'll see how much longer I can make it. Thank you so much for your support.
Sounds good. Elliot, do you have 2 words to summarize episode 85?
I have 2 words. I don't know how good of a job they're going to do at summarizing what we just learned, but I'm going to go with contentment and morality.
Paul?
Those are some deep words. For mine, I have betrayal and misconception.
All right. Let's use these 4 words and talk about the end of part 4 of Oathbringer. All right. All the people who have needed to click away, I hope have clicked away at this point. Who's going to say it? What did we learn? Who's going to say it?
So apparently our humans are not from here?
Yes, indeed. If the Eila Steele from the Dawn Chant is to be trusted, the humans are not from Roshar. The singers are. And with that elephant in the room pointed at, Paul, what are your 2 words about?
Well, my 2 words. Misconception. I'll talk about that one because that is relevant to this. I chose misconception because I'm guessing it is a great misconception that the Alethi have been the inhabitants of Roshar for all of time, or like the original people there, kind of the owners of the land, I guess. Right? That's kind of the assumption. So that's a large misconception, assuming that Eila Steele is accurate. The second word is betrayal, which is due to Taravangian and his undermining of Dalinar.
Okay, Elliot?
I'll mention morality first. So this whole revelation that the humans are not the natural inhabitants of Roshar. In fact, they are the original Voidbringers, potentially here, puts into question a lot of moral questions that we've been, faced with so far. A lot of the reasons for why our characters are doing what they are, we've got to go think about a little bit. And so hence the morality of that. My next one was a little more specific. I went with contentment for a specific dialogue between the Stormfather and Dalinar as they're processing this. They talk about Shinovar being the land that was given to the humans to live in. And they quickly talk about, well, obviously, humans could not constrain themselves to Shinovar. And they talk about how no man is ever fully content, and no tyrant ever stops wanting more. And I'll talk about it more when we get to that. But what a painfully relatable human sentiment.
Good stuff. I have a couple questions for you guys, but I want to talk about the beginning of chapter 111 before our entire world gets turned upside down, because there's some important information here that we don't want to skip over. Last episode, Dalinar figured out, Thaylen City is going to be the next target for Odium and his forces. Who's in Thaylen City right now at the beginning of this chapter? Before the coalition shows up, who's been stationed in Thaylen City for a while?
Amaram
and Sadeas's troops have been sentenced to, this is how Amaram views it, have been sentenced to manual labor in enemy territory to show that the Alethi aren't going to conquer the world. Amaram thinks the Alethi are going to conquer the world, and this is just a show of face of we're going to help you. He's pretty upset that his men are the ones that had to do this, that I have to go to Thaylen City and help rebuild a city because we got nothing better to do with Sadeas's troops. They're troublemakers. Let's get them out of your Thiru. So Amaram's kind of upset about that, and has kind of been... He hasn't been dissuading the Sadeas troops of Dalinar didn't kill Sadeas. Little does Dalinar know that his son Adolin did in fact kill Sadeas, and there's proper cause to be upset about that. So, what are you guys' thoughts on Amaram's initial reaction when Dalinar walks through the Oath Gate?
I liked it. I liked seeing Dalinar honestly stand up to Amaram, because Amaram is doing his thing of I'm so great, I can do so much more than you have me here for. And Dalinar's like, you want to prove how great you are? Just do this like I asked. Just quit whining, pretty much. Would you like some cheese with that wine? It's just kind of a mess. But I way to go, Dalinar. I was a fan of this.
Can I flip the tables here and say I was not impressed with Dalinar in this scene? Actually, we talked last episode, Paul, of I was kind of backing Dalinar a little bit, and you were kind of getting on his case, and now we're going to flip that on its head. In this scene with Dalinar and Amaram, I actually don't think Dalinar handled this super well. Amaram seems like he is potentially actively undermining Dalinar, which, not surprised, right? It's Amaram. We should see this coming. But when Dalinar kind of puts his foot down and takes a strong, you're going to do what you're told because I'm telling you to do it, that's a dangerous path, I think, because it might spark even more active resistance from Amaram. The comparison I want to draw is actually to Star Wars. So shout out to one of the most epic sci-fi series of all time, Star Wars. One of the recent-ish Star Wars films, The Last Jedi, actually has a leadership moment in it that really bothers me. It's probably the thing about that movie that bothers me the most. And there's a lot of polarizing opinions out there about Last Jedi. We're not a Star Wars podcast, so we're not going to get into all of that. But one of the biggest things about The Last Jedi that bothers me is a leader shows up in that movie with the rebels, and her name is Vice Admiral Holdo. She takes control of the ship, and they're in a dire situation. The First Order is bearing down on them. They're gonna kill them all. And Holdo has a plan, but she does not share it with our hero of the story, Poe Dameron. Poe is a very rash, hot-headed, active kind of guy, and he doesn't like that Holdo. He doesn't like her plan. So what does he do? He ends up rebelling against her, trying to take over the ship, causing a lot of problems. All of that would have been very easily solved if Holdo had just told Poe the plan on at day one. Why she doesn't tell him the plan is my biggest problem with that entire movie. Why in the world she doesn't tell him the plan, I don't know, but it causes problems. Here in Stormlight Archives, Dalinar is not telling Amaram the plan. He is not telling Amaram, "Hey, Thalen City is about where the action is going to go down. You're actually right in the middle of it all. You're complaining that we've left you on the fringes, that we've kind of, outcast you. No, actually, you're going to be in the front lines of the battle starting really soon." Why not tell Amaram that? If he did, that might convey to Amaram, no, what you're doing is actually important, and it might make Amaram feel a little more included and might give him a reason to actually back Dalinar a little bit here. So that is my very long-winded comparison to Star Wars to ultimately say, I actually don't like that Dalinar is excluding Amaram here.
I actually don't think I've given this much thought as much as you did right there. That Dalinar just backhands Amram and says, "Know your place. I'll talk to you later. Bye," and move on with the scene. I guess I didn't really give it that much thought.
And it may not end up being all that important, but if we are about to have a siege and an invasion of Thalen City, and Amaram's troops are going to be the front line, and Amaram is going to be the main, battle general, Dalinar needs to have him as with him as possible. And pushing him away, alienating him here in this moment, not a smart move. And I get that it's Amaram. I get that he's out of line. Yes, you got to, stand up for your authority. At the same time, you really need this guy working with you right now.
It's true.
I think the only reason I was jumping to Dalinar's side there, or the biggest reason, is because it is Amariam.
Yes.
If it was anyone else, they need to know. But if it's Amariam, honestly, my thought was like, he could be like, no, I don't want to be at risk. Like, I'm going to leave. Or something. But we will see.
Anything else you guys want to talk about before we get to the meeting chapter?
One small thing I'll actually just mention on the side. Renarin speaks up. And I think we've mentioned this before, and I've taken this to heart. When Renarin speaks up, it seems like it's wise to listen. And because he seems to know things. He seems to have we don't really know a whole lot about his powers, but we know he was the source of the countdown of the days to the last desolation. He knew what was coming, or at least had an inkling. So whenever I see Renarin said in the text, I pause and I'm like, okay, whatever's coming next is going to be important. But what he says here is interesting. He asks about, are there any stashes of large gemstones in the city? They're like asking about, they're talking about like bankers and like small change. And he's like, but are there any large gemstones? And they're like, oh yeah, there's some over in that building over there. And Renarin's like, okay, good to know. And then the scene moves on. And if it weren't for what we've learned about Renarin, I probably would have passed right over that. But because Renarin seems to know things, now I'm intrigued. Why does Renarin want to know where the large gemstones are instead of the small ones?
That's a good question. I would like to know a lot more about Renarin. At the moment, he's our search binder that I feel like I'm most excited to learn from because I don't know fully what he does, and we always get these little quips or moments where he's like, "Oh," and then runs away. But it was like we know there's
Yep.
way more to it than just that. And he's not talking. He needs to spill the beans.
I have a question for you guys about Renarin. Not really about these gemstones that he's asking about, but he's a truth watcher, right? What does he do?
He's talked before about like vision and potentially like, it's never said this, but like seeing the future ish, or like kind of seeing what's coming maybe.
and he writes on the walls for Dalinar of, 30 days till the true desolation or whatever, or Everstorm comes or whatever he's writing. I want to go back a little bit. Chapter 101, the epigraph for chapter 101. Moalak is very similar to Nergaul, though instead of inspiring battle rage, he supposedly granted visions of the future. In this, lore and theology align. Seeing the future originates with the unmade and is from the enemy, from Hesi's Mythica. So are Truth Watchers just misunderstood, or is there some truth to this? What do you guys think?
I'm not sure. Paul, you mentioned that Renarn's kind of a little bit of an unknown still. And I don't feel like we know enough because he doesn't speak up a lot about what his powers are or how he interacts with his spren, how his surges work. I would be very surprised if the Surge Binder abilities are tied to an unmade. If that's kind of where you're leading with this, that would be pretty shocking to me since they seem to be rather directly opposed. But perhaps.
Or is this just a case of Hesi's Mythica is mistaken in that which one came first, the chicken or the egg? The unmade is replicating the Truth Watcher as opposed to the Truth Watcher is getting power from the unmade, right?
Could be. I am very much craving a Renarin point of view chapter.
Oh yeah.
To kind of piece together his perspective on things. I feel like I don't even know if it's a reread of where Trevor even is, but I imagine that all the Renarin moments that we're seeing would be cool reread things. Like, oh, like this is probably what he was thinking about. But I don't know if we're gonna find that out soon. That doesn't seem very much on the stove at the moment.
I was gonna say
Pretty back burner.
Renarin might know too much for us to be able to get a point of view chapter from him and still be interesting. We might learn a little bit too much about the Stormlight Archive too fast.
Yeah. Could be. I already know everything though.
All right. Let's talk about the meeting. Meeting starts in Thaylen City. All the monarchs are there. And the trap that Teravantian has set springs. There's 3 key information leaks that happen within the span of about 5 minutes. Span, read, get it, funny. And they are what? I'll let you guys say them.
So the first one is we learn that the Everstorm is coming, and it's coming early, which surprises everyone a little bit, but at the same time, they don't know this storm super well, so it's not like shocking. But it's the Everstorm is hitting the west side of Roshar, and it's coming sooner than it should, which has implications for their fleet that they're trying to assemble, but they think it's going to be okay. They think they're going to get their ships, to safety in time. It shouldn't be a huge problem. But that's only number 1. Paul, you dropped the second.
So Dalinar was like, "Oh, that wasn't so bad," because right before the Stormfather was like, "Something is coming," and then they're like, "Oh, the Everstorm," and he's like, "Okay, well, we'll work on that. That's no problem." And then the Stormfather's like, "That wasn't it," and then
I love your Stormfather voice, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Something is coming. And then they find out that the Eila Steele is translated, right? This like ancient text. Is that the second thing? Like, is that the next big one? So the Eila Steele has been translated from the Dawn Chant, and it's written by like a Dawn singer, right? Like that's the history of it, supposedly. Yep. And it gives an account of before let me get my terms right here. Way before the first desolation, right? This
Right.
is the, like, what is it called? The Day of Reclamation? I don't even know.
Maybe. I don't remember.
Who knows? Who knows? Way before the first desolation, the first Voidbringer sighting, and it's talking about how they're they don't have a carapace and stuff, and Dalinar's like, that's weird. Like,
Can I read it?
Parshendian. Yes, that would be much better.
All right. So the second big thing that happens in this chapter, they get a span read from a scholar, and it says this: they came from another world using powers that we have been forbidden to touch, dangerous powers of spren and surges. They destroyed their land and have come to us begging. We took them in as otherworlders. No, we took them in as commanded by the gods. What else could we do? They were a people forlorn, without a home. Our pity destroyed us. For their betrayal extended even to our gods, to our spren, stone, and wind. Beware the otherworlders, the traitors, those with tongues of sweetness, but with minds that lust for blood. Do not take them in, do not give them succor. Well were they named Voidbringers, for they brought the void, the empty pit that sucks in emotion, a new god, their god. These Voidbringers know no songs. They cannot hear Roshar, and where they go, they bring silence. They to look soft with no shell, but they are hard. They have but one heart, and it cannot ever live.
It was pretty intense.
I thought back to Way of Kings. I think it was early Way of Kings when we'd heard the term Voidbringers. And Paul and I are over here trying to figure out what is a Voidbringer. And we're
I thought it
throwing
was
out
the
some
Midnight
crazy
Essence.
Yeah, we're throwing out some crazy dark shadows and evil beings and stuff. And then we had a big reveal that Voidbringers are these awakened Parshendi. Little did we know the true origin of the Voidbringers, or those that brought the original destruction onto Roshar, were none of that. Instead, they were the humans who are our heroes in the story. Man.
Real quick. Did either of you see this coming? This reveal coming? Did you guess this?
Oh no.
I did not guess it. I was not yeah, I think this is gonna happen.
Okay.
I didn't think that. I will say I don't know that I was that shocked about it though. It wasn't like oh my gosh, what? I didn't know that I had that form of reaction.
So I do want to I want to highlight a couple things that point to this as you've been reading. So what language is this written in?
The Dawn Chant.
The Dawn Chant. Okay. Does that make more sense now? That we've heard that a long time ago, and you just whatever, it's called the Dawn Chant, whatever.
Yeah.
It's singers, that's their language, the Dawn Chant.
Yeah.
2. Let me pull up my notes here. What's an axe sound? A crab dog, right?
Crab dog?
Crab wolf? What's a chol?
A crab horse.
A crab cow.
Crab cow.
What's a parshman?
A crab man.
A crab person. So Roshar is the crab crab place.
One of these things is not like
right.
the other, or whatever it is.
Exactly. So the people are the odd thing out on Roshar. Now, one moment.
Well, it's getting serious.
Oh boy.
It's breaking the book out.
With this reveal in your minds, I would like to read a couple things. This is from earlier in this book. This is page 534 in my text. And I'm going to read these out of context, see if you guys can place them and figure out what's actually the undertext is actually talking about with this revelation. You aren't angry that we conquer you, Leshwi said. No. Then what does anger you? What is your passionate fury, Moash, the man with an ancient singer's name? Yes, it was there, still burning deep down. Storm it. Kaladin had been protecting a murderer. Vengeance, he whispered. Yes, I understand. She looked at him, smiling in what seemed to him a distinctly sinister way. Do you want to know why we fight? Let me tell you. Next one. In that darkness, shadowed figures seemed to accompany him, armies made of red mist at the corner of his vision, charging forces that fell to dust and sprouted from shadow again, like surging ocean waves in a constant state of disintegration and rebirth. Not just men, but eyeless horses, animals locked in struggle, stifling the life from one another, shadows of death and conflict to propel him through the night. Dalinar dragged Oathbringer behind him. It made a soft scraping sound as it cut in the line of stone. He numbly heard soldiers talking by the bonfire ahead. And one called something out. Dalinar ignored them, each step relentless as he passed into their light. A pair of young soldiers in blue crowded their challenger until cutting off and lowering spears gaping. Stormfather, one of them said, stumbling back. Collect and the Almighty himself. Dalinar continued through the camp. Noise stirred at his passing. Men crying of visions, of the dead, and of Voidbringers. He made it for his command tent. The eternity it took to get there seemed the same length as the others. How could he cross so many miles in the same time it took to go a few feet? Dalinar shook his head, seeing red at the sides of his vision. Two more. The girl finds steps, Shallan said. And the girl realizes that the wall wasn't to keep something in, but to keep her and her people out. Because we're monsters. You're not a monster, Shallan, Wit whispered. Oh, child, the world is monstrous at times, and there are those who would have you believe that you are terrible by association. For you see, it flows the other direction. You are not worse for your association with the world, but it is better for its association with you. And one more, which we read last week. What if the lord of the city had stopped paying his taxes, then forced his people to defend the city when higher authorities arrived and attacked? Is not a prince justified in maintaining order in his lands? Sometimes it is to kill ordinary people. But that is not what happened here, Szeth said. You said this was caused by an invading army. Yes, Nin said softly. This is the fault of invaders. That is true.
I see the signs as we start to look back, and the number one of all being the crabs. Like, humans clearly don't fit in this world, and that was a sign of, hey, why are they even here? The answer that I thought was going to be was, well, they don't belong out here, they belong in Shinovar, and they've kind of grown from there. And that's kind of the truth, but it's not the whole truth, as we'll talk about. But yeah, a lot of those quotes you just read, Trevor, very different light now.
I have to say, I think the one, like, by far, the quote that stuck out to me the most was the first one with Leshwi talking with Moash.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't fully know how to, like, unpack that. But, like, I don't know, did Moash know this? I don't...
Nobody did then. That's where the scene closes, right where I stopped reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Leshwi... That's the information that Moash gets, and then he goes and trains the Parshmen that Kaladin used to know.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Gotcha. I was only confused by why he had an old singer's name, I guess. But that's why I was like, did he know? Is he like, I don't know.
So a question I have coming out of a lot of this is, in this revelation, in this description that we get, it says that the invaders brought with them a new god, and that this god was an empty pit that sucks in emotion. So I'm stuck here wondering, who was that god that came with the humans? Was it honor? Was it odium? I can't really tell, to be honest. I think this could go a couple different ways because it describes this god as like this empty pit that sucks in emotion. When I read that, I think of odium and the scenes we've seen with him and the way we've had, passion and emotion related to odium. But at the same time, I could also see that applying to honor. If honor is going to take a very strict, like, I'm about oaths and upholding oaths and nothing but oaths, there's not a lot of room for emotion in that. Did honor come with the humans to this world that was odium's beforehand? I don't know.
I have some thoughts about that. For one, I think it's the Stormfather. Either that or one of our honor spren mentioned how honor was so fond of the humans.
Yeah.
And two, I can't imagine odium seems to be kind of working with the Parshendi, right? I can't imagine them doing that if he was the god who came onto the scene, kind of driving the powering force of what got them into this mess initially. Assuming they know that, I guess.
So
but I can't imagine them being on the same side.
there's a couple other candidates that you guys should consider here. The two obvious candidates is it honor or is it odium? It's not cultivation. And you know that because the Dawn Singer who's writing this says they cannot hear Roshar, as if Roshar is making rhythms, and we've postulated that that's cultivation in the past, right? So that cultivation was already on Roshar at that point, and they knew that they should be able to hear rhythms, but they can't. Secondly, what have we had referred to as gods before, specifically by the singers?
Weren't Spren entirely
Right.
their gods?
And
like the high Spren, maybe more specifically.
And what? Okay. Let me ask the question this way. What evidence is there that the Parshmen were the Voidbringers to the Alethi?
That they came bearing surges that the Parshendi weren't supposed to use.
But no, I'm talking about like in Words of Radiance. When they're fighting the Parshmen, they're assuming they're fighting the Voidbringers. Why?
Because their eyes turn red and they're wielding powers like red lightning and things like that.
Yes. Why are their eyes red?
Because they've attained a new form, right? The form of power.
It's like the corrupted odium spren.
Maybe.
The Everstorm?
No. They glow red before the Everstorm even gets there.
Okay.
There's an unmade present on the Shattered Plains. The thrill is there, affecting both sides of the conflict.
Right.
The thrill makes it so you see red in your opponent's eyes, not your own and your allies. So their eyes, the Alethi, when they're affected by the thrill, their eyes are red as well. And they see it in each other. the Voidbringer. They bring the void with them, the god that sucks in passion. This could be the thrill that we're talking about.
That makes sense.
See the logic that I'm using there?
Yes.
And the men back in the camp, when Dalinar has just gone on this kill rampage, are not affected by the thrill. They're not in battle right now. Dalinar has just come back from battle. His eyes are red. And the men scream about Void. They just saw a Voidbringer come out of the darkness. And it's Dalinar. Comprendo?
See.
Okay. Have I lost you
trust
guys?
a lot more now than I have previously.
Have I-
Usually I'm like,
I'm tracking.
Trevor
Okay.
said it, so it's not true. But
I'm just making sure I haven't lost you guys.
Now I trust you.
Okay. So, it could be Honor, that the god that they're bringing with them. It could be Odium. It could be a Spren.
Or even multiple Spren, perhaps. Maybe the Unmade are what came with the humans, like all of them.
Right.
Interesting.
There is this notion of like Odium's champion, right? Who's one of the Unmade, or maybe
Maybe.
it's like him and the Unmade or something.
It is a champion with 9 shadows. 9
That's right.
presumably meaning the Unmade. Because there's 9 Unmade, whatever.
Yeah, it could be that champion, whatever that entails. This is one I feel like every time we have something really big, I'm like, okay, I have like my 1 or 2 or maybe 3 leading theories. Right now, I'm like, I do not know. I do not know who it is.
All right.
My only thought right now is that it is both Honor and Odium.
Okay.
Both Honor and Odium came.
Okay. Let's put a pin in this real quick, unless you want to keep talking about it, Elliot.
Nope. Let's move on.
Let's fast forward to present day. This was lost to history even from 4,500 years ago when the Radiants found this out, right? And the old Radiants found this out. They abandoned their surges and walked away. This was new information to them at that time too. So this is a really long time removed. How does this affect morally Dalinar's war? Does this really change anything? The the Singers and the Fused and Odium are trying to kill them. That's their goal, is to wipe them off Roshar and reclaim Roshar. Does the fact that the Parshmen, the Singers, were the original beings on Roshar affect their moral battle now?
It has to. It absolutely has to. And I would say that it does, in the sense of the end goal of what you're fighting for here has to change. And I would say that because I wouldn't jump immediately on the bandwagon of humans everywhere need to lay down their arms and just give up. I'm not going down that path. That you're fighting against an enemy who's trying to wipe you off the face of the earth. That's not necessarily the right way to go here. They should defend themselves, but it changes from a we're getting invaded by an enemy army, we should fight back with everything we have. It changes from that to, oh, wait, we're the invaders. We don't have a right to fight back with everything we have here. The ultimate goal here should be some sort of a compromise. The end of goal here should now be, oh, crap, we don't have a right to completely subject you. Let's find a way to both live here together. Instead of a how dare you try and take over our world, we're going to squash you, to, oh, this is actually your world. You have just as much of a right to it as we do. probably more than us. How do we figure this out? So it changes from how dare you attack us? We're going to kill you all to let's figure this out. At least it should, in my mind.
Those were my thoughts as well. I was gonna say, like, being very, I don't know what the right word is. Realistic, pragmatic. I don't know. I feel like none of the words I can think of fit. But in the context of you have been here for thousands of years and you are in a war, right? Yeah, you can't just lay down your arms and be like, oh, we translated this old text that says this is your house, not my house. We are leaving now. Like, where do you go? What do you do? Like, it's just not realistic. I think your approach to this changes. But honestly, I'll just say, like, I don't know how much it should. I mean, it's really, like, tough for you as a motivation. Like, you obviously don't want to kill anyone or, like, honestly do any fighting. Like, I don't know what you do. But, like, where do you go? Because I don't think you just, like, give up yourselves and your lives and your, you know, everything because of this old thing that's 5,000 years old.
The Eila Steele is even further removed from that. It's more like 9,000 years old.
That's what I was saying. I mean, yeah, like it's from right there, and it's like, oh shoot, I guess we'll just go back to our world that we have no idea what that world is or where we came from or anything. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
And how do you do that? You know, like,
yeah. Just being like realistic. It's like, I don't know. I feel like they came and they conquered a long time ago, and it's crazy now. But like, you can't change what happened 9,000 years ago. You can try to right wrongs now, but like you're looking at a big process there.
I completely agree. And I'm also thinking, the lesson coming out of this revelation is things are potentially bigger than you think they are. Don't make the wrong assumptions. Or I think Paul, your word was misconception. Is that what you used to start? I thought that was good. We have to even take this lesson and keep applying it. Things are even bigger than we think they are even now. Think of the Spren. Think of what we're learning in Shadesmar. Not only is this a battle for Roshar in the physical realm, that there's also the cognitive realm to think about. There's also the Spren. I'm wondering back to some of our questions. We're still wondering about the relationships that Spren have between humans versus the relationships that Spren have between singers. And we've gotten some hints, and these are just hints. We need more to formulate this, but it seems like the relationship between a Knight Radiant and their Spren is a very healthy one that benefits both and brings out like new abilities in both the human and the Spren. It seems like, need more info, that the relationship between a Spren and a Singer is not necessarily a healthy one, even potentially an unhealthy one, where the Singer is imprisoning that Spren like almost like a Fabrial does and uses the power of that Spren to accomplish what they're doing. So when you put things in kind of that light, there's still more going on here than we think about at this stage. Yes, we now need to think about this as Singers are not the invaders. It's really humans who are originally the invaders, but there's also still more going on here to think about before we, throw out some kind of ultimatum of, oh, the humans have absolutely no ground to stand on. They need to throw down their arms now, sort of thing. So I'm hesitant to draw any quick conclusions.
There's one notable exception to that rule that you just made about singers and humans with their Spren, and that is who? Venli with Timber. Venli has a Storm Spren in her gem heart, but she also has Timber. We don't really know what that's about.
Yep, for sure.
Insert book 4 here.
Yes. We still got part 5 to go, but yes.
Uh-huh.
All right. Paul, before we hit the record button, you said you had the Stormlight archive figured out. Do you want me to hand it over to you and you can talk for a bit, or do we want to keep going for a little bit?
We need to keep going a little longer.
Okay.
I believe. I actually need to double check our outline. We do need to keep going. We need to keep going.
Okay.
I can talk about Shinovar real briefly, if that fits in.
Yeah.
So we're skipping over chapter 112. We can come back to it in a moment. But another bit of information coming out of this is what's important about Shinovar, which I keyed into because we're getting a little bit of a history lesson along with this. We realize that Shinovar is familiar to us as humans who are from Earth with grass and trees and horses and chickens or whatever they have. Not because necessarily that Shinovar was that way originally, but that's the plot of Roshar that was given to humans and populated by all of those things that humans brought with them to become a little piece of, I'll use the term Earth because that's what we're familiar with, not to imply that that's where these humans necessarily came from, but
Right.
a little section of human land on Roshar being Shinovar. That was what they were given. They were supposed to stay there. They didn't. This is starting to put together some of the ancient history pieces, and that was really helpful for me.
In what world does a tyrant settle for what he's been given? Or is that the
And that was the quote that stuck out to me that I picked my word for, which was not only what tyrant ever. The quote is something along the lines of like, what tyrant ever stops that says, "Oh, I just conquered this nearby country. That's enough. I'm happy. This is good. That's what I wanted." No, there's a hunger there. There's a drive just kind of innate to human beings of wanting more. We're never satisfied. You always want the next TV show, the next book to read, the next, money. You get a raise at work and you get excited about it and you feel good, but then 6 months later you think, oh, I still need more. I'd be happy if I got this much. There's just this lack of contentedness that I think is innate to human beings. And I think that's what I don't want to imply that this is like a Sanderson belief, but this is what the characters are talking about in this section is that drive and how humans were given a small plot of land, but that was never going to be enough. There was always going to give it 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. There's going to become a moment where humans are going to expand. That's just kind of how humans are.
Bridge 4 walks out of the meeting, and their heads are down, and rightfully so. They've just learned that the Parshmen are the original holders of the land that they're standing on, and they tell Dalinar, like, I understand you're trying to do the right thing, and we thought we were on the right side. We're gonna go back to Urithiru and tell the other bridgemen, and we'll talk to Kaladin, see what he says about it, because he can figure this type of thing out. This is above our pay grade, is what Teft basically tells Dalinar, and then they walk off to the Oath Gate.
The reliance there on Kaladin I thought was funny. Funny in like the ironic sense of like they have all faith in Kaladin. I totally get it. They've seen Kaladin do amazing things. They've seen Kaladin make some pretty impressive choices. I'm not doubting that at all, but it's just funny how they, this huge revelation comes down. They're like, oh yeah, that's big. But what does Kaladin think about it? Like
That was funny.
They can't make a decision. They have to know like what their leader says about it.
Also,
like, whoa, that's insane. I should get Kaladin to explain this to
interpret
me.
it for me. Yeah. Kaladin's also been missing for months now, right? Like, he went to Kholinar. He didn't have a span read. They haven't been talking to him. He's been missing from Kholinar for a long time. And they're all like, oh yeah, he's out there. Like, they have no doubt that he's alive, and he will explain everything to them. We're just going to go back to your Theru for now.
I like too that in the process of this, Dalinar makes a pretty powerful statement. The Stormfather kind of looks at him and says, "Well, that was the big drop. You're gonna walk away from this now." And Downer says, "No, I'm not going to walk away from this." And the Stormfather, I think, doesn't really believe him. He's like, "Yeah, you're going to at some point." But Downer says very clearly that he wants to make the Knights Radiant a better version of what they were before. They talk about that this is the truth that broke the Knights Radiant of old. This is what caused the Recreants, that caused the Orders of Knights Radiant to walk away. And they talk about how the reason why was because they realized that the powers they were wielding destroyed their old world, and they didn't want that to happen to this world. Dalinar says he takes a different tact. He's thinking, at least for now, to himself, I'm not going to walk away from this because I'm scared of what it will do to this world. I'm going to keep going with this and do better. I'm going to do this correctly and not let that happen, which is a really admirable and slightly terrifying way to go. Like, if he doesn't necessarily realize the full implications of that, then that's a little scary. But I like that mentality. I like the mentality of don't give up, do it better.
I do as well. And you know, this is something I really liked about this and liked about Dalinar. In that I can understand why, but I was a little like surprised, I guess, that was like what made the. Well, actually, okay. I was thinking of it in the context of the old Knights Radiant Orders found out this is not their homeland and they laid down their arms, but I didn't think of it in the context of they destroyed their previous world, risking refuge, and that makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I don't know. We've definitely seen our Knights Radiant characters are a little crazy, so maybe if you had a bunch of them, it could very well happen. But I don't know. I would trust Dalinar's like supervision or leadership here to maintain things, but I don't know. I don't know how you go about destroying a world. Honestly, like you have to really mess up
There's
pretty bad.
a key phrase, a key title word that the Stormfather mentions in connection to destroying their old world. What was it?
I don't recall.
Is that in chapter 113?
It's in 113. Elliot, you put it in the outline.
Oh.
Was it regarding the destruction of the Tranquiline Halls?
Yes.
Ah.
The Dawn Shard, right?
Yeah.
Honor
So they
in his
used-
last days was. This is the words of the Stormfather. He says, "My memory is clouded. He created me as a backup plan, and he was ranting about the Dawn Shards before he died."
The hint about the Dawn Shards is, I feel like, teasing me a little bit because it does hint that they're important. It also drops the bomb that it doesn't say the Dawn Shards were created to be able to destroy the Tranquiline Halls. No, it says the Dawn Shards were created and they destroyed the Tranquiline Halls, which that's a little bit of a bomb drop if you think about it. Like, we already know that their whole Vorin religion, and more than Vorin, I think religions on Roshar, are worshiping the Almighty. Well, the Almighty is Honor, who's dead. Does that kind of null and void a lot of those religions? Maybe. We also know that they have this very strong beliefs that when you die, you go to fight in the Tranquiline Halls. I think we just got told that's not a place anymore. So that whole belief is now gone.
I forgot about that. That's kind of big. Yeah, by the
Yep.
way,
Heaven got destroyed.
Yeah.
Hate to break it to you.
Yeah, this whole Valhalla thing, yeah, it's gone. Not a thing anymore. But yeah, the fact that
yeah,
the
we
Dawn
heard that too.
Shards, the fact that the Dawn Shards are a part of all this, now I want to know more about these. What are these?
What's
What are they capable of?
the novella between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War?
Dawn
Dawn, right?
See,
Yes.
I didn't know that when I read this for the first time. That title was not released to me at that time. So you guys actually get a unique view on that. There's a book behind me called Dawn Shard, which we're gonna read not too far from the now.
Which brings me to a big point. Okay. So we have just recently seen these mention of dawn shards. And I was like, what could these be? Right? These are obviously intensely powerful on a cosmic scale. So far in our reading, we are past halfway through the series here. We have seen, I would say we have actually seen I would say we've seen two examples that could be in my head, like where I'm thinking of this. One is, do these dawn shards, like, I don't know, correspond to a god or something? Like, one of the examples I'm thinking of is Odium, like breaking through the canvas of the stream. Like, I don't know, could he be connected with a power strong enough to destroy the Tranquiline Halls? But what I'm thinking of more is Nightblood. I'm thinking of on the same way of a shard blade almost.
Okay.
But Nightblood, we've talked about, like, this is a very different sword. This is not a shard blade. We talked about maybe it's a sword that just has a quadrillion breaths and is uber powerful, but I don't think so. I think that Nightblood, as well as, we haven't seen, but Azure's sword, exists in the cognitive realm, isn't correlated to a bond. It's something totally different. I think that they are dawn shards. And Trevor made a little crack at me saying, I have figured out the Stormlight archive. I know it all now. I know what's going to go down. Eliot had mentioned before that there's kind of a little prediction or thought of, we initially, like in the prelude to the Stormlight archive, we see about the swords kind of being rammed in the ground and making kind of this, there's this like oath pact with the heralds, right? And we thought maybe there would be a redo of that. We've seen a little bit of that just with our characters and, let's say, Zeth being a new order of Skybreaker. I think each of our characters is going to get somehow a Dawn Shard, and I think that will be the complete other tier or layer of power to make a pact with, and either defeat Odium or create a new pact that whatever has greater significance, greater power, or something along those lines. But where are these Dawn Shards? If this theory is kind of accurate, that's kind of ambiguous. I have tried to think about this a little bit with rules, right? Our Dawn Shards seem like swords. They don't vanish. They kind of just stay in their sheath. Azure has drawn her sword, hasn't she?
She used her sword in
It's like a
Kolinar.
shard blade. It's like a shard blade, but it's kind of different. It doesn't like sever the soul, right? It doesn't burn out the eyes. I don't know. I'm kind of giving them the credit that they're all very unique and different. If this is the case, like Nightblood, we don't draw, right? Like we don't draw Nightblood. He's gonna go crazy.
Unless you're Zeth and are super cool.
Yeah, that's true. I also think I thought it was kind of funny whenever it talked about the Dawn Shards destroying the Tranquiline Halls. I was like, whenever they were made, did some guy just like pull out Nightblood because he was like, "Oh, you should draw me." And he was like, "Okay," and just drew him, and he just destroyed the Tranquiline Hall. Like just
oops, heaven's gone.
He was like, "Oh, whoops, okay."
Oopsies.
Don't do that again.
But Yes, I think the dawn. I think that our mysterious swords that have incredible cosmic power. I don't know about Azure's. It seemed underwhelming in comparison to Vasher, but we've never seen, or in comparison to Nightblood, but we haven't really seen the perspective. We know it is very unique, totally different. Could be a different order of Dawn Shard, Surge Binding. I don't know. Who knows? But that is my prediction right now. Which Trevor's gonna be like, "What about this quote?" And
New,
then I'm gonna be like, "Dang it!"
new Oath Pact at the end of Stormlight 5, I'm assuming.
Yes,
Which
pretty much.
and they use Dawn Shards to make it more permanent than the first one.
My main prediction is that our heroes will get Dawn Shards to defeat evil.
Okay.
Either whether that's by a pact or by sheer power of them wielding the Dawn Shards, defeating Odium or something, slaying a god.
This is a lot for one mention of one word.
It is. You're right.
I'm with you. No, I'm tracking.
That is big. That puts a lot of significance on Nightblood, which I'm not going to deny. Nightblood seems like an out of place, crazy powerful weapon. I gotta say. So to attach a lot of significance to it, I'm definitely not against that. Is Nightblood a Dawn Shard? Oh man, I got to think about that for a while, and hopefully learn some more
I
about
was
Dawn
gonna
Shards
say
here.
you need to
coming up
define
soon.
Dawn Shard first.
I
I'll,
was one thing I wanted to add right quick is you already know that somewhere we have seen a Dawn Shard. I'm just gonna make that prediction, and Trevor's gonna be like, "Guys, do you think you've seen a Dawn
Yeah,
Shard
but
before?"
how
And
many have you seen on screen so far?
yeah, exactly. And I'm gonna be like, okay. Um, and so yeah, I'm giving a lot of that significance to Nightblood, and also honestly, this makes me really want to go reread the scene in Warbreaker. Right, there's a scene where Vasher draws him, and he kind of just sends up a huge hyper beam, black beam, and just destroys everything in its wake, and it's just really crazy. I would like to reread that now with this context and this idea I have. So
I'm not sure that Dawn Shards are going to be swords. If I'm
that's
honest
also
with
fair.
you, it says clearly that they are weapons, but we also know or have had some references to like shard plate, being a thing like separate from a shard blade. So I'm almost thinking, like I don't know, some other type of object or even just more nebulous power that's I mean, we're talking about destroying a realm, perhaps. This is some pretty, as you said, cosmic power.
Okay, I want to add one thing to that, and that is I thought about this a little bit, and I agree. I was like, okay, it would be cool if they were all if they're swords, right? But I was like, honestly, that's going a little too hard into the whole sword thing. I don't know. We already have a lot of mystical swords. We have shard blades and honor blades, and, like that's a lot. And I thought about Hoyd a little bit here. Hoyd, so I don't remember what all he has. I feel like he always has a random object with him or something. And I'm wondering if his like flute that he used for like mystical storytelling or something like that.
The Kaladin lost.
I think so. Wait, doesn't he have another one though? He's always like, "Where's my flute?" But that's the Kaladin one,
So
isn't it?
yeah, so he gave Kaladin his flute in the Way of Kings, and Kaladin left it in the war camps when they went to Urithiru.
Yeah, which is still really funny. I kind of forgot about that. But anyways, I was like, I could see like just how mysterious and crazy Hoyd is, and like how much he knows. I would love to ask him this question. Um, but I could see him having some kind of I don't know storytelling equivalent of a Dawn Shard or like a musical thing. He's always talking about music and whatnot. So who knows? But I'm saying I could get behind that they're not just swords, or maybe they're not swords at all. It's obviously very possible that I am wrong. So
Not quite as sure as your Light Song Shalon theory.
Yes, that one was proven.
Yeah. Sure.
This one, this is an early prediction.
Got it. Anything else about Dawn Shards? We talked way more about Dawn Shards than I thought we would.
That's literally, I heard the word, and that's all I like in this episode, and that's all I wanted to talk about when I came here to record. I won't lie. It's gonna be like, so did you hear they said Dawn Shard?
Well,
Don't you know that means it's Nightblood?
Clearly.
Yeah.
I know this is not on the scale of Roshar and Tranquiline Halls and Dawn Shards, but Eliot, you finally found out who Tara is, and you've been wondering who that is. You want to dial it back 12 notches and talk about who Tara is?
Let's do a 180 here and talk for 2 minutes about the chapter we skipped over, chapter 112. And I got really excited actually for not really any reason, just that we got a little bit of backstory about who this Tara character is. Because Kaladin has mentioned her 3, 4, maybe 5 times now as we've been reading. And they're always just those, tantalizing offhand, oh yeah, Tara would not have approved of that. Moving on. Like, okay, thanks, Kaladin. Tell us who this is. And so I've been dying to learn who this character is for so long, and we finally get it. We learn that she was not someone of actually what seems like super significance, in that she wasn't, a powerful person. She was just the daughter of a assistant quartermaster in the army that Kaladin was serving in, and they had a relationship, and they chat and they enjoy time together, and they were torn apart by some, just kind of unfortunate circumstances of she moved away to go pursue an opportunity, and Kaladin was hurt and never followed up with her. Like, that seems to be the entirety of the story right there, which compared to everything else that we're learning, at this point in the story is just such small potatoes. But at the same time, it was actually a big relief to finally learn, okay, this is who we're talking about. Got it. I feel better now.
That's true. My biggest question about this is why?
Why or why now?
What? Oh, mostly why now. I was trying to be funny, but like I don't know why we are having this Kaladin flashback chapter to see his little high school relationship.
So
in the middle of like the biggest and like surprise, I guess, of our series so far.
Yeah.
I was like, well, okay, all right, we're taking it back
there's
to book 1 here, Brandon.
there's actually a good answer for this question. It's a good question. Why and why now? Do you want to say something before I talk, Paul?
Yes, my one thought is it's going to tie into the 4th ideal for Kaladin.
Okay. What is his
really
takeaway from remembering Tara right now? What is he's running. He's running through the mountains towards Thalen City. There's a takeaway in his mind as he's remembering this. She tells him something when they leave. What does she say?
It's something about like fight for those who still live or something like that.
Kaladin, when will you learn to be there for the living, not just the dead?
Ooh.
And this whole time, Kaladin's been holding Tien's rock in his pocket, and that's why he doesn't go with her, because he sees this injustice in the army, stays because he wants to defend those young boys in Amaram's army who are being thrown basically as livestock at the front lines. Be there for those who are still living, not just the dead. That's why now. Just wanted to answer your question there. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
Interpret that towards your 4th ideal predictions as you will.
I don't know the 4th ideal. I do know the 5th ideal.
Oh,
So
Oh, wow.
That's okay.
Become the wind. As the Skybreakers become law, he becomes wind.
Yes, exactly. No. But I do have a prediction. It's kind of serious. I was actually thinking about it in our last episode, I think, because we were talking about the fourth ideal. I think
Make it
the
quick. We don't
ultimate-
have that much longer.
Yes. I think the ultimate defense or protection for someone that you could have, and I'm assuming the fifth ideal is the highest. I'm assuming there's nothing past that. What I think of is laying down your life to protect others. And I think it will come to a head, and it will be some form of I will literally give my life to protect those.
My
the lives of
prediction at this point in my reading, my prediction, Paul, was the fifth ideal for the Knights Radiant for the Windrunners is I will protect those who cannot protect themselves even unto death. That was my prediction for the fifth ideal.
Let's go. High five.
Okay. Part
You
4.
didn't high five me.
I did. I will like that.
Okay.
Um,
Just one beat.
Part 4 of Oathbringer. Huge info dump. We've learned so much about Stormlight Archive and the Cosmere since the beginning of Part 4 to now. How do you guys feel about, we learned about Shadesmar, we learned about the singers, we learned about all sorts of cool stuff. What are you most excited to learn now? What do you think is still included in this book that we need to know? What are we not going to learn in Part 5? Just quick zoom out about Part 4 before we close.
Definitely biggest question. What happened with the heralds? I don't know if that's been answered or what, but I want to hear Nail talk to Seth about that situation with the heralds. He was like, "I'm going to tell you what happened."
Leaving Talonel.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my biggest thing. I can't wait to see it. I'm assuming it's going to be in Part 5.
So looking back on Part 4, I wanted to bring back a quick short segment that I've done in the past, but I've neglected in the last couple of parts of Oathbringer, and that's trying to tie together a theme for the part. And if I were to try and do that for Part 4, I wrote out a bunch of notes for what that theme would look like and couldn't quite pin a word on it until Paul, you said your 2 words for this episode, and I realized that one of them is it. And that word is misconceptions. That nails it for me. That is the theme of teamwork here. Good job, guys.
Let's go.
Of this Part 4, because there were so many things that came across as, oh, you thought this is how it went. You're completely wrong. And the things I can put on there are humans existing on Roshar, that whole big drop we got at the end here, but so much more than that. The Radiants were not necessarily who we thought they were. We learned about them. Spren are not who we thought they were. We're learning tons about them as we go to see Shadesmar. Shadesmar itself is not what we thought it was. There's even on the flip side a bit of information in one of these chapters where the Stormfather admits to a misconception. He says, "You know what? I judged the Knights Radiant of old too harshly. I thought they rashly threw away their oaths and they were to be judged for that. I see now that they were trying to protect Roshar." And like that process of acknowledging that you were wrong and acknowledging that what you thought was the way the world works is not true and reassessing how you're doing what you're doing because of that. We're having to do that as a reader. Our characters are having to do that in the situations that they are. So that's what I'm walking away from this part from. I'm curious if that's also going to be my theme for the entire book or if something bigger is going to happen in part 5. I'm really curious about that. So as we go forward into part 5, I'm really looking forward to like what comes next. We just got the drop of Shadesmar's not what you thought it was. Now we're stuck there. We aren't who we thought we were. Do we even have a right to be fighting this war? Like, what do we do next? Are our heroes going to get back from Shadesmar? Is Dalinar going to go to war and have a big old, naval sea battle be the climax of this book? Or is there going to be some big twist and like cultivation is going to show up on the scene and we're going to have a big peace talk? Like, where are we going? I'm really not sure, but I really want to at least wrap up kind of the story arc we're in. I know it's going to launch us off to a bunch of other stuff and it's not going to like wrap up everything, but kind of okay, now what? That's what I want to answer in part 5.
Not to mention we're meeting the Night Watcher, I assume.
Yes, that's on the agenda for sure.
Okay. Just a quick reminder on the state of Thalen City right now. Everybody's in Thalen City. The coalition has just fallen apart. Who owned the ships?
Mr. Taravangian.
Taravangian just told Dalinar literally at the very end of part 4, the last page of, I'm no longer fighting alongside you, Dalinar. I mean, we do that from the start, that he was going to eventually backstab him like that. But he's telling Dalinar, I'm leaving. Bye. Good luck. See ya. And that might turn into a good thing for Dalinar eventually, but his navy is sailing away right now. So, thank you for coming this far with me, guys. Go ahead, Paul.
Shard boats.
Shard boats.
They're gonna make shard boats. You're welcome.
Problem solved.
Everyone.
Okay. Any other predictions from part 5?
No new ones, just the ones that we've had before.
Night Watcher, Thalen City fight, probably. Anything else?
Shard boats.
Fourth ideal, shard boats. Okay.
Mhm.
I never thought we'd get here, but we are finally going to start reading part 5 of Oathbringer on this podcast. I am so excited to
After
read
these short interludes.
interludes next week, starting part 5 the week after. So thank you for joining me on this journey, Paul and Eliot, and we will keep reading and reconvene next week.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Wow. Wow.